Sanctions threaten UK as positioned as playground for Russian oligarchs. First penalties on Russians could hit what some call Moscow on Thames. But before we dive into this matter, let me ask you a question. Do you know how many millionaires there are in the world? 5 million, 10, maybe 20? No, we are talking about more than 50 million millionaires around the world today. But perhaps the most impressive fact is that it isn't the vast majority of these cases. We are not talking about inherited wealth. 3 out of 4 millionaires today are self-made. That is, they created their own wealth through their own efforts. But have you ever wondered where these people prefer to live? What are their favorite destinations of the wealthiest people on the planet? Well, I'm sure you already know where this is heading. Because yes, the city with the most millionaires in the world is not New York or Singapore or Dubai, or even that little gem called Miami, it's London. The British capital has around 900,000 people whose net worth exceeds $1 million. In other words, if you go to London, approximately 1 out of every 10 people you see on the street has more than $1 million. And that's not all. London also ranked 7th on the list of cities in the world with the most billionaires, the mega-rich. More than 60 of them live around the tens. Surprised no wonder, especially when we realize that London is not exactly a city famous for sun beaches and mojitos at sunset. So the question is, what on earth is about London that attracts so many millionaires? Okay, the short answer would probably be something like Grant. It's obvious that is where the money is. And in a way, yes, that is true. London is one of the great 2 financial centers of the world. And the other one is, of course, New York. We are talking about a place where investors from practically every corner of the world converge. If you're a government or a large company and you want to raise large amounts of funding, you will probably be forced to visit the British capital. Nearly 20% of all international bank lending and over 12% of all listed international bonds originate in the UK. In addition, London is also the derivatives capital of the world and the center of more than 40% of all global foreign exchange trading. We are talking about a huge hub for financial services of all kinds, a city which also houses the European headquarters of hundreds of multinationals. The so-called soft power, low taxes along with the flexible and non-intrusive regulations have positioned London as a world epicenter of financial activity. Another one's wonder is a money-making rocket, and people with money like places where they can make even more money while keeping their fortune safe at the same time. I mean, come on. I don't think we are reinventing the wheel here. What we are talking about is black and white legal certainty, the fundamental ingredient required for a country to prosper. But let's not get sidetracked. In addition to all these factors that are key behind the success of London, and in general of the United Kingdom, there is another reason that we can highlight, and that so many of you may not know about the so-called Tier 1 visa, also known as the Golden Visa. Perhaps brilliant idea, but like everything, one that has its positives and negatives, one that has currently been identified as one of the means of punishment against Russia for the invasion of Ukraine, or rather as one of the means of punishment against the oligarchs who support Vladimir Putin. EU lawmakers to push for ban on new golden passports visas for Russians. Johnson government ends golden visas for Russian oligarchs. UK crackdown on Russian oligarchs may spell the end for London grad. Wealthy elites are being forced to choose between their wealth, their luxury, their future, and supporting Vladimir Putin. And so, visual politic viewers, in this video we are going to tell you how the UK has been trying to attract millionaires from all corners of the world and how this has become a huge headache. Because of the express visa is granted to hundreds of Russian oligarchs, let's get cracking. The visa of the rich. First of all, an important note, golden visas are not exclusive to the United Kingdom. In fact, there are 23 countries in the world that have such visas, each with their own quirks. Even countries such as Greece and Spain, which are not exactly known for being the most business-friendly places on earth, have such visas linked to investment in assets such as real estate, stocks, or public debt. For example, in Spain, the model was implemented in 2013. With the aim of providing an outlet for many of the empty properties that remained unsold when the real estate bubble burst in 2008. And this way, in Spain, you can buy your visa if you acquire properties worth at least €500,000 or $547,000. In fact, post-Brexit this has become a good business for Spain and for the Mediterranean countries. In general, let's just say that many British people are considering buying property in order to obtain a visa to be able to do business and be able to come and go from countries like Spain without further limitations. Britons now choose EU countries' golden visa schemes to win back their travel rights. Which is exactly the same thing that many Russians have also done. Just take a look at the Mediterranean coastline in southern Spain. So at this point, the question many of you may be asking is, why are they only focusing on the UK as golden visa? Well, you see, The truth is that few countries have had as both much success and as much controversy with this type of program as the good old United Kingdom. This implementation in 2008, more than 12,000 millionaires and their families have seen the British doors flung open wait for them all thanks to the Tier 1 visa. Currently, and after several modifications and tightening of the requirements, at least £2 million, slightly more than $2.5 million must be invested in companies registered in the country or in bonds. In addition, with this type of visa, you can apply for permanent residency within a certain number of years, a period which is shortened as the amount of money invested increases. Yes, in a way, it's kind of like buying a visa and jumping the queue on the application list. This is essentially the idea. If you bring money and investment into the UK, they open the doors, wait for you. The question that comes up is what kind of impact these schemes have on the general economic life? Is this Tier 1 visa beneficial to the country or not? Well, according to the British government itself, the purpose of this type of visa is to increase investment in the capitalisation of companies registered in the United Kingdom. In this way, the economy becomes more competitive and job creation increases. This benefits the middle and sometimes working classes. The more companies there are, the more robust VR and the better it is for everyone. As a result, the British Golden Visa can be considered as a dynamiting element for the economy. We are talking about a tool that has managed to attract tens and tens of billions of pounds of productive investment into the United Kingdom. Which all sounds great, doesn't it? Of course, these types of schemes also have their weaknesses. Many detractors criticize them for being a kind of safe conduct for large fortunes which wealth may have been obtained, shall we say, not very cleanly, to say the least, in countries where the rule of law and control are conspicuous by their absence. On the other hand, they can also act as a refuge for many rich people who, thanks to these kinds of visas, are able to escape from tyrants of all kings. Be that as it may, the question that concerns us most today is another one. Guess who have been the investors most favored by the UK Tier 1 visas? Well, it's the Chinese and the Russians, especially the Russians. The latter have in fact become quite the headache for Downing Street. Have you ever heard of a London grant? No, let's take a closer look. Welcome to London Bread. In 2015, the Russian television channel STS launched London Grant, a TV sitcom about an agency specializing in solving problems for Russian millionaires living in London. Sounds hilarious, a plot that, as random as it may seem to us, it's not really random at all. Perhaps its storylines are not all that far-fetched. You see, of the approximately 12,000 holders of British Golden Visas, around 20% of them are Russians. Obviously, there's an explanation for this. For that you have to go back to the period from 2008. 2015. This was a period known as, I'm not making this up, blind faith. Let's say that back then the program had few requirements. And above all, there were hardly any checks in place to know who the beneficiaries of the Golden Visa really were and where their fortune came from. And of course, if we mix all these ingredients in the same shaker, Russians, millionaires and few checks, what do we get? We get the oligarchs. Suddenly, the British Tier 1 visa model became a magnet for Russian fortunes, so much so that in the 7 years between 2008 and 2015, 85% of all Golden Visas were granted to Russian investors. But of course, when the requirements were tightened, the flow of arrivals from the Russian motherland slowed down a lot. Curious, since 2015, Russians only account for 15% of the visas granted. It's still a huge percentage, but it's not quite so crazy anymore. And I'm sure none of you are surprised. It's as if many of the Russian millionaires looking to invest and live in the UK are not really happy to have their affairs snooped into. I mean, I don't know why, but it also doesn't surprise me. The fact is that there was a moment when the British government realized that something was going wrong, very, very wrong, basically, because the country was filling up with Vladimir Putin-friendly oligarchs, and with them, the influence of Russian investments linked to the Kremlin government in the British economy was also increasing. For example, according to the organization Transparency International, since 2016, more than £1.5 billion, that's $1.64 billion, went into the country's real estate assets have been bought in the country by high-ranking Russian officials and oligarchs linked to the Kremlin. And what is said is that the true figure, taking into account the opacity with which these people operate, could be much, much higher. And of course, this is just one example. So you can believe us when we tell you that this, from a geostrategic point of view, is not the best idea in the world. Not to mention that many of these people are used to doing and undoing things as they please, not only related to their own affairs, but also to other people's for them, things like the rule of law, competition or free business. Well, what can I say? They sound like imperfections resulting from Western softness, as a culture that is not exactly good for the general business climate. There are even reports that